I will return on the basis of astrology, and especially on the planetary archetypes. And in particular concerning Mars and Venus. My intention is not necessarily practical. What I say is not necessarily useful for practitioners, but it is also a good thing to prove that actual astrology, modern astrology, is based on wrong principles and wrong elements. Because you cannot propose something new without attacking the old system. And if I can prove that astrologers have been very very foreign to a proper conception of the seasons, of the gods, that they have misunderstood many things about these questions. I think that will be fruitful. When you ask astrologers about Mars and Venus, they will tell you, for instance, that Mars is the planet of Aries, of the sign Aries. That the beginning of the spring has something to do with the analogy of Mars. But on the other hand, Venus comes just after Mars in Taurus. And Venus is supposed to be very different from Mars. The question is, why do we have Mars and Venus occupying two signs which come one after the other? We actually have the same problem with Moon and Sun. Why, if Moon and Sun are so opposite symbolically, why do they occupy the two signs which start summer, one after the other? First Cancer for the Moon and Leo for the Sun. And there are other questions. Why do we have also Mars and Venus, not only for spring, but also for the autumn, for the fall? Why Mars was, at least until the 19th century, was connected with the Scorpio and Venus with Libra. While at the same time, Mars was also related to Aries and Venus to Taurus. Why do we have the same planets for the two opposite seasons, spring and autumn? This is the sign of something very confusing. And well, I am not sure that many students in astrology are very much upset by that. It is another story. So, I really believe that Venus has to do with the spring and Mars with autumn. as a V, like in vital, and Mars as an M, as murder. The murder is also the end of the process, the final aspect of the process. So we have a period which is a period of fusion, where the different forces are gathered. Venus is a mark of the union, while Mars is a mark of the disunion. Venus is, in my system, connected with the conjunction of Saturn, with one of the four rules with the stars. While Mars is what I could call a distraction, a decomposition in several parts. Mars has something to do with multiplicity, while Venus has to do with unicity. It's like in Tower of Babel, you see. There is a time when the Babel Tower is just one thing, and afterwards it's destroyed, and great diversity of languages and people and nations result from that. Mars is producing confusion, dispersion, destruction. And in mundane astrology, 1989 is marked by Mars. Not the planet Mars in my system, but the Mars period. Because I like to use this vocabulary to indicate the meaning of the period. And I think all the astrologers, ancient astrologers, were using the planets not, the gods not as planets, but as marks of the climate of a certain period. And it's only in the second stage that these gods would have been attributed to planets. Quite wrongly, according to me. And it's important to understand that in the period of the conjunction of Saturn with one of the four stars, as already mentioned, we have a Venusian period, which is also, in fact, which you could define as imperial. Imperial empires are structures, entities, which gather a great deal of various factors within the same ensemble. And in the Martian period, all these factors will be dispersed, will be going in several directions. What happened in 1989 was typically Martian. The end of the Soviet Empire, of the Communist Empire in Europe, because in fact the empire is based on Venus, reunion, gathering. Refusing frontiers is Venusian. As you know, the connection between people, between nations, is using very often the bias of women, marriages, mixed marriages. And what happens today in Ukraine is in fact Venusian. As paradoxical as it could appear, Venus is also defined by what I call a reduction of time and space. What was in the past comes back. What was distant is near, it becomes neighbor. The distances are limited by Venus in this process of union, gathering, which does not accept any limitations, any frontier. It's our eyes see Venus. While Mars is much more connected with the idea of death. Death is what happens when you die. When you die, when someone goes, very often he's replaced by several people. While someone dies, he has several heirs, like Charlemagne, Carlos Magnus, who had 3 sons, which he divided his empire in 3. Germany, Lorraine, Lotharingi, and France, Gaul. Death is Martian, and in certain way we can say that women are Martian, although it seems also a little paradoxical and bizarre. But women develop themselves when men die. They replace them, they prolong them, they continue them, their work, their heritage. Mars is also connected with the solar with autumn and winter, while Venus is connected with spring and summer. Gemini, son of Gemini, is typically Venusian, although it is attributed a tradition to Mercury. But when you look at the symbol of Gemini, you can see that it's very Venusian. And there is a iconographical representation of what is Venusian, where we call it in German the Planetenkinder, the child, the kids of the planet. And you have typically Gemini representations to illustrate this Venusian system. What I wanted to prove is that Georgia have a very poor understanding of their own tradition. Now there is a question that you have to ask me. there is still this attribution of Mars to Arius, but I think that it's a result of the effect of the precession of the equinoxes. I think that the frontier is not between Pisces and Arius, but between Arius and Taurus. And there is a proof of that. You know that the system of the rulerships is organized according to a certain symmetrical axis. For instance, we know that the rulerships of Sun and Moon are Cancer and Leo. But Cancer and Leo are supposed to be part of the same season. So it would have been more logical to create an axis where both luminous lights would occupy each one a side of this axis, and not being both of them on the same side. So it's probable that when the ancient astrologers attributed the lights to the zodiac, there was an axis passing between Cancer and Leo, which means that the Cancer was the end of the period and not the beginning. Like Arius was not the beginning of the period, but the end of the period. As a matter of fact, in the Bible we have the sacrifice of animals. And as I say, it's sacrifice connected with Mars, connected with death. Abraham was supposed to sacrifice his only son, Isaac, or for the Muslims, Ismail. And at the end, another animal comes instead. A goat, lamb, doesn't matter. So you see, these animals like the goat and the lamb are doomed to die, to be sacrificed, to be eliminated, to be eaten. So it's not at all a symbol of beginning of something. It's a symbol of the end. So can we take astrologers seriously when they make such quiproquos, such misunderstandings of the mythological system? Question that I wanted to ask you. The moon corresponds to the end of something, like Mars, and the sun corresponds to the beginning of something, like Venus. Because, as a matter of fact, if you consider the exaltations of the planet, we have the same problem. Moon and the lights in exaltations occupy Aries and Taurus. So once more, the axis would have been logically passing between Aries and Taurus. So when we say, and it's probably what happened before in the past, and it's wrong to say that both lights correspond to the same season. So the system itself, of the exaltations of the rulerships, proves that initially the axis where the planets are organized, especially what we call the double rulerships, Mercury in Gemini, Mercury in Virgo, Venus in Taurus, and vice versa. The axis passes between Cancer and Leo, and which means that these two signs cannot belong to the same season. And at the same time, Mars and Venus cannot belong to the same season. Another element which I would like to deliver tonight is concerning Mercury and Jupiter. Because in fact we have four groups of planets. Sun and Moon, Mars and Venus, Saturn, which is at the opposite of Sun and Moon, which is double, and we have still two planets, which are Mercury and Jupiter. So where do we put them? As I noticed before, why do we have at the same time Mars and Venus at the beginning of spring and Mars and Venus at the beginning of autumn? And I think that something wrong happened here, and there's no reason why we should have both twice Mars and Venus. So I think one of the two positions of Mars and Venus were in fact connected with Jupiter and Mercury, so that we have a balance between these seven planets. There's no reason why Mercury and Jupiter should be forgotten in the system. So you see, progressively, we return to an original astrology. Why? Because I believe, and I will finish on that conclusion and that principle, that the more a system is coherent and clear, the more initial it is, the oldest it is, and at the same time the youngest. Young astrology, we are today living with the old astrology. Young astrology is what is interesting. Young astrology can be restructured and discovered and reconstituted and restituted and reconstituted by trying to find more logical structures. Even if we do not have the trace, the remnant of very old periods of history of astrology, we can rebuild these periods, rebuild our information by working a sort of archaeological approach of astrology. And if we discover things which are more structured, more clearly structured, then we can decide that it corresponds to the young astrology.